and welcome to this edition of Crush Your Mountain: Health, Wellness, and Personal Growth. I had to combine all three, and I'm going to tell you what. I happen to have with me an extraordinary lady. Now, the first thing that makes her extraordinary is she's from my neck of the woods. She's from St. Albans, Queens. Okay. The other thing is that Miss Rozlyn Sorrell is a voice coach. She is an actress of stage and screen. She is a singer and performer, and she has a lot to help us with today, particularly when it comes to keeping our bodies healthy by means of voice itself. Have you ever thought about that? Think about the fact that around the world, there are singing traditions that are there for healing, be it the singing of the Hillels, be it the singing of the Tibetan monks, be it the singing of just the joyful noises that take place in various places around the world. Hey, what did your mom do with you when you were just a little baby and she wanted you to go to sleep? Hopefully, and more than likely, you remember she sang, she hummed. Well, we're going to talk about how important it is that we maintain our health and how our voice comes into play and how singing, perhaps, can be a healing act. Welcome with me, Ms. Rozlyn Sorrell. Welcome to Crush Your Mountain.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I've got something to live up to, huh? I appreciate that. Warm welcome.
Well, it's such an honor to have you with us, and I wanted to touch base on quite a few things. So let's get a little bit of background in terms of your wide experience as well as your multifaceted talents. Talk to us about your career in performing.
Well, it is wide and vast. That's just as you said, and it started very early. I remember being pulled out of my third grade classroom in elementary school to be in the school glee club. And I know I must have been singing before that, otherwise they would not have known to pull me out of the classroom. But that was my first recollection of actually realizing that I had a talent or a gift. And so I've been singing since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, so to speak. And I went to junior high school and then to high school and into college. And one thing just ran into the next year. And I never really thought about performing full-time because my degree was in education. But, you know, life has a way of throwing us.
If we cross paths in any possible way. But so elementary school, 147. Which?
Oh, elementary school was PS 118 off of Farmers Boulevard.
Okay, 118 Farmers Boulevard. All right, let's move on up to
junior high. It was 109.
109.
Junior high school 109, and I think that was in Laurelton, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And then I went to Andrew Jackson High School.
Andrew Jackson, you were down the street from me. All right, there we go. Andrew Jackson. Now he went to Gene Laguerre. He actually went to Springfield.
Okay, I didn't know him.
No, he's in Laurelton. He's in Laurelton.
Okay.
And I only met him fairly recently. We came to realize we had so much in common.
Okay. And
so that was the case. Yeah. So before I go off the wandering road, I want to ask
because I was about to do that.
How did you move into the performing? You started singing at an early age, and when did you decide to move into it professionally?
I don't know if I really did. I've been performing all my life. I was doing nightclubs and I performed in school, and I was always having a solo during our spring and winter festivals and things like that. But in my mind, when I graduated from college, and I went to Hunter College, I did both my undergrad and graduate work there in New York. And when I graduated, because of my degrees, I just assumed that I was going to teach the rest of my life, you know, get into that hustle. But I said to myself, okay, self, before you buckle down, audition for one more show. And that show took me to Puerto Rico for 6 months.
What show was that?
Yeah, it was called a magic. I can't remember, something magic. It had to do with just a medley of performances. And it was a 45-minute show. We did it every night for 45 minutes, and then we had the rest of the time to ourselves. But after 6 months, you know, it was kind of boring there after that period of time.
Really? Yeah.
And I was ready to go, but nothing was happening in New York. So my friends would say, well, don't come back here. You might as well stay there because nothing's happening. I don't know if it was a strike or whatever, but it just didn't materialize. So, and I hadn't seen my brother for about 8 years, and he lived in California. Okay. So this is way back now, because I remember they were hard copy pictures and resumes. They weren't digital then.
Right.
And I
LinkedIn.
Exactly. So I sent out pictures and resumes to different agents and said I was coming to town, and I got 3 responses out of 25. And one said, thanks, no thanks. One said, thanks, we'll keep you in mind if we need someone like you. And the last one said, well, when you get here, let us know and come in.
Okay.
I went in, I auditioned in their office, just read some cold scripts, and the rest is history. They said, okay, we'll represent you. And bang, bang, bang. I got 3 shows they had me go on, and I landed all 3 of them. It was like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Really? Okay. Now, what part did you play?
Oh, don't blink. If you've seen it and you didn't recognize me, that's because you probably blinked or went to the bathroom. I was a nurse. Okay. I was a nurse, and I was saying, Joey, what's the matter? That was my one line. I got 3 days work out of that one line.
I gotta find it now. If I find it, I might put the clip somewhere up on put a link to the clip so everybody can see that.
Okay.
So now that was Nightmare on Elm Street. What was the next one?
I did a Matlock and another episodic. I don't remember what the third one was, but there were 3. I just remember auditioning for 3 things and getting all 3. And I said, oh, I like it here. So what was just supposed to turn into a summer ended into 17 years in California.
Wow. That's all right.
Yeah.
But now, at some point, though, you began to use your voice in terms of just singing alone, and then coaching others in terms of that. I help individuals in terms of lowering their glucose, in fact, reversing type 2 diabetes, losing things of that nature.
Awesome.
And one of the things that happens with many of my clients is that they realize, or they begin to realize, how much the entire body, the mind, the spiritual side, all of that is connected to their state of health. You know, they said recently they noticed how just the act of humming can lower a person's blood pressure. So in your practice of voice coaching and things like that, what have you learned?
We don't have enough time for that.
We'll take as much as we can get. Okay. If you have to go home, we'll just leave the light on for you. Okay?
Well, you mentioned humming, and it's just like, we used to play around, and when I was young, and I would say so it has that kind of relaxing meditation sensation, and or just breathing, inhaling for 4 beats, holding it 4 beats, and letting it go for 4 beats. This tends to just slow down the heartbeat, and which will also slow down your pressure. And so we take so much for granted about our health. Something as simplistic, even though it's not, as speaking. This is the same instrument that we sing with. But the things that I teach as a vocal coach, and actually I'm a singing teacher as well as the vocal coach. And a lot of people don't know the difference. I teach the methodology of how to play the instrument of voice. And then once you have that technique down or solidified to some extent, the basics, then I say, these are the sounds that are also in one's music and in the lyrics, so they can be understood, so they can hold the note, so they can sustain and go through pianissimos into forte, which is loud to soft, and to be totally in control, that requires breath. So those are the kinds of things that I focus on. But as far as health is concerned, if you take care of the instrument in your youth, you will have it for longevity. I don't know if you are familiar or you've heard anyone who has a raspy voice or their voice quivers and things like that. It has to do with something that occurred in their youth, or even if it's wearing headphones and blasting them in your eardrums, that's going to affect your voice also, because it affects what you hear. And so it's those kinds of consciousnesses that I focus on, and what to not to scream loud when you're in a crowded room or with lots of music, or a ballpark and you're rooting for your favorite team. These are things that really affect your instrument of voice. So it's hygiene, vocal hygiene.
So when it comes to the voice, now you mentioned a couple of things there. Okay, I want to circle back because you mentioned the Om. Now, of course, that it comes essentially out of Buddhism and Hinduism.
Exactly.
And the idea was getting into the meditative state. So the hum, okay, and this is something that's really powerful, because it's only fairly recently that they discovered nitric oxide in the body. Now, those who are bodybuilders discovered nitric oxide because if you notice, those guys have all these big veins.
Yes.
They take the nitric oxide in order to open up the blood vessels to get more blood to the muscles. That's why they all look like they were grown in a lab with these huge veins all over the place.
Exactly.
But the thing about nitric oxide, the body produces it naturally. And one of the ways that it produces it is just by humming. And so when a person takes that moment to hum, and so what I like to do with my clients, one of the things is to get them into what's called a gratitude practice, okay? But now, in doing so, they get into that meditative state, and as they begin to do that monotone hum, they focus not only on their breath, but also on their blessing, so to speak. And so now you have both the endorphins coming from the good feelings of gratitude, but you also have the nitric oxide, which opens up the blood vessels and lowers them, and they get into that state.
And that vibration of the hum is a very calming sensation as well. And it's spiritual. It helps you connect with your spiritual being.
Yeah, absolutely. And in so many different ways. Now, we mentioned also the vocal coaching, which is different from the actual singing.
Correct.
Now, so for, let's say for me, now I come to you and I've got to give a talk in a couple of weeks. And I want to, let's give you some more time. Let's say in a couple of months, I've got to give a talk in front of a huge, large audience, okay? And I want my voice to be more resonance, have that. How would you help me? What steps would I take?
Well, I'm glad you changed it from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, because quite frankly, I do strongly recommend, I used to have contracts for a minimum of 3 months, but people aren't like they used to be. They don't take their signature or their word for anything. It has no value. And so I stopped having them do contracts, but I do strongly recommend a minimum of 3 months, because even though you may intellectually understand what I'm saying and you may be able to produce what I asked right there on the spot, it's not something that you're going to maintain for any length of time because your bad habits have already set in. So my purpose and goal would be to change those bad habits to good ones. And it takes about that time for you not only to be able to do it, but to catch yourself and self-correct rather than having me there all the time to say, now don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that. And so what I would do with you is start with 4 basics. And I've heard it as 3, but I added a 4th. And it starts with breathing. You can't do anything. And we do it naturally, breathing, when we speak. And if we speak fast and we get excited, we take a quick breath. But that's not something that one thinks about. But when you're singing, it's definitely necessary, or speaking, because it's the same instrument. You have to take that breath in. So you have these 2 balloons. Remember when we were children, we would blow up the balloon?
Yes.
Yeah, we would blow up the balloon and we get this big wad of air. And then we would with the lip of the balloon, we let the air out. Because if we just opened it up, the balloon would go everywhere without any control. So we have to learn to control that breath. And the second thing is to support that breath. You talked about working out. So if you have a barbell with weights on it and you're lifting the barbell, if the weights are too strong for you, you're not going to be balanced. And that's what's going to happen with your tone. Your voice is not going to be balanced. You might go flat because the air is not being supported. And then, of course, we have this range of voices. You have a rather low voice, but you have the potential to speak high as well when you get excited. So that needs to be placed. So breathe, support, and then place it in the region of your body where you want the sound to be projected, and in the genre or pitch that you want it to be projected. And then after that, the one that I add is project it out into your audience further than the first couple of rows, because you have an audience that goes all the way to the back of the auditorium or in the balcony, and you want them to hear you as well.
I've always wondered how a person is able to project their voice that far, especially up into the balcony, with little or no microphone.
Well, it takes time, of course. I say 3 months, but that's mere basics. You know, I have had students work with me for years because there's always something to learn and always a place to grow from and to. And so opera singers used to be known for being heavy set. They had to be big because they thought that that body weight was what was producing all of this mass and volume. But it has nothing to do with the body weight. It has to do where are you projecting and pushing and placing that air, because the roof of the mouth, for example, is called the hard palate. And so the hard palate has bony structure, and bone is a good conductor of sound. So it resonates and has a more rich tone rather than being up in the head where it's a more lighter, airy kind of sound, you know? So that's the difference, just knowing where to send it.
Being the weird kid that I was growing up.
I'm messing with you. I'm sorry.
But I was just referring to the kid part. If I was going to say, I was being the weird guy that I am. But being the weird kid I was growing up, I was always taken by this particular rock singer. His name is David Bowie, because of his range.
Yeah.
And I had always, and in fact, the one song that the 2 songs that struck me was a song called Fame, which he did with Queen Latifah on a cover years later.
Yes.
But he does this, starts fame, and goes all the way down. I never knew how that was done. So can one practice to increase their range and as well
absolutely. Yes, in a word, yes. Think of the horn. We are wind instruments, yes?
Yes.
But the air is coming from within us out. Like if you're thinking of a horn, which only has 3 notes, or a saxophone, it only has 3 notes, but why is it that it can play any melody? It's because you're dealing with what's called an embouchure of the mouth, the lips, the teeth, the tongue, and how you're placing it on the mouthpiece that provides all the different pitches and ranges. Well, we do the same thing. And that placement that I talked about, it could be down here, down in your chest, or then it could be here in your nasal passage, or it could be up in your head. So wherever you place it is where the sound is going to come from. And yes, if a person is here, if I take it a little bit up top and a little bit on the below, then I can expand their range a little bit at a time. They have to be willing, because it's more than just those 4 things. That's why the lessons are necessary in order to accomplish that with guidance and direction.
That's cool, though. So until I'm able to fly out to get coached by you directly, what exercises can I do? What exercises can some of my clients do? Because I do have clients that do public speaking. I myself do public speaking. What exercises can we do to strengthen our voice?
Excuse me. Actually, you mentioned come out to me. It's not necessary because I teach virtually now, and it's just as effective. Sometimes I went, for example, recently to one of my students' homes because she's a little younger. And sometimes there's something lacking there for them to completely understand. So I took it upon myself to go to her so I could work with her personally, which is what I used to do all the time. But since COVID, we've had to adjust and adapt what it is that we do. And so I use the internet and a vehicle where I can coach wherever you are, whether it be in this country or internationally. And so wherever you are, just simple things just to warm up. No one would think of, if you're running a marathon, no one would think, oh, the marathon is today, and they just put their clothes on and start running. That doesn't happen because they're afraid they're going to break a muscle, stretch a muscle, or pull a muscle, I should say, and do some kind of damage. They always stretch first, and then they don't just stop, they cool down. So they take care of their bodies. Well, the same thing with the voice. It's always good to warm up, whether it be with, my favorite is a lip trill, that kind of thing on a scale. A lot of people can't do that. So a tongue trill, like rolling your R's in Spanish, they do the same thing. It's preparing the vocal cords to sing rather than just start belting away, because you can develop nodes and really hurt yourself and end up having them removed and have to be silent for weeks on end until they repair themselves.
That's a very important factor. It's the things that we have to do to take care of our voice, the exercise and like that. Now, on the nutrition side, are there foods, are there beverages, things like that, that a person can take to soothe and indeed enhance the voice?
Well, first for me is water. People don't realize that so much of the body is water. It's 3/4 water. And people say, I don't like the way it tastes. But now there's so many different things you can put in your water to make them more flavorful. They have vitamins and different things that you can squeeze into your water to make them taste better. But I just like plain water, and it's preferable to do room temperature rather than ice water, because you take all this time to warm up and then you get warm and then you drink cold water, you freeze the vocal cords all over again. So you kind of defeat your purpose. So, and I personally don't have some of the challenges that a lot of singers do, that you hear, don't drink or eat milk products because it develops and creates a lot of phlegm, and you have to clear your throat and so forth and so on to get through that phlegm. That doesn't bother me. I don't know if it's because I have the technique and I know how to sing over it or not, but that's one of the main things you're told, not to eat or drink a lot of milk products. and then not anything too hot is not good. Not too cold, not too hot, because you can burn and hurt yourself there. Eucalyptus, a lot of times people suck on lozenges that have eucalyptus in it. And even though they may taste good and they may clear your sinuses out, it's not very good for the vocal cords when you're singing. What else? There's so many different things that I could say. Vitamin wise, I swear by vitamin C and garlic, and what else? Zinc is very good. Zinc, if you're going to have a lozenge, zinc is good. B12, because it gives you that energy. There are a lot of vitamins that I take in general, just for general well-being, but vocally, those are some of my favorites. And to keep oneself free of germs and COVID viruses, that's the word I'm looking for. I use a lot of echinacea, but that I've heard people say, oh, I don't take echinacea because it ruined my voice and this happened. Well, it could be because the dosage was too strong. It could be because they used it for too long a period of time. It's not like a vitamin C where you release anything that the body is not absorbing. Echinacea should only be taken 6 to 8 weeks at a time. And then, because it's built to build up the immune system. Once it's been built up, you can ward it off for a season. And then when that season changes again, you can go back to it for another 6 to 8 weeks, because the whole idea is to stay healthy and to defeat that bacteria that may be attempting to attack the body.
Yes, indeed. So we're going to. I had a friend of mine. He likes to sing. And he would always carry around a little jar of honey when honey was cheap. So does honey improve the voice?
I don't know so much that it improves it, but it is very soothing, especially if you are having some vocal challenges. For example, the weather changed so abruptly on Sunday, and I went out not knowing it was like that, and I didn't have on as much as I should have had on. And I came out of the building and I felt the chill when it went into my body. And I'm usually more conscientious to take something that night, but I failed to take something that night and I woke up with a scratchy throat. If I had taken it that night, I would have been fine, but I didn't. And so the honey, the tea, with a little honey really was very helpful. It soothed and took the scratchiness away. I would stay away from lemon. If your voice is already scratchy, I would stay away from the lemon because it has the acid in it, and that's just going to make it a little bit more abrasive. So if you are trying to get rid of an exorbitant amount of phlegm, then that the lemon will cut through the phlegm and help eliminate it, but everything in moderation, and everyone's body is different. So they have to adapt themselves to whatever it is they're doing. There's a throat coat tea. It's not the most pleasant tasting. So when I use throat coat for medicinal purposes, I'll put a little honey in that just to make it taste a little bit better. So there's a lot of things that one can use. And there's another one, slippery elm is another tea. Slippery elm, yes. And these are things that you can get at a health food store that are very helpful depending upon what your ailment might be.
Well, I'll tell you, you have such a wealth of knowledge and you're able to apply it in so many different ways. Now, we talked a little bit about the box breathing earlier. And one of the things I'm going to also leave for my audiences is a box breathing gratitude meditation. So stay tuned. So guys, keep on the lookout for that. Watch this space, as it were. And we're going to have it. And I want you to get into the habit of utilizing this. This is absolutely no charge for this. But what we want you to do is to get this into your system. Number one, to release stress. But number two, also to engage that vagus nerve, engage the parasympathetic nervous system, and start to lower your glucose, lower your blood pressure, because that's an excellent tool. Many times we get pills and stuff from the doctor, and if you watch this channel a lot, you know how I feel about the U.S. sick care. So this is a free modality that you can use, and so keep an eye out for that. But I wanted to touch base with you one more thing, Ms. Roz, and I ask this question of all of my guests. It's the last question I ask before we close out. Rozlyn Sorrell, what does it mean for you to crush your mountain?
Well, everyone, of course, has a different mountain, but and a lot of people would be surprised to know that one of my biggest mountains is fear. And so I felt a lot of that when I was growing up, that had a lot to do with the criticism, teasing, ridicule, whatever you want to call it, from people who did not understand and appreciate my voice. Because I have more of a trained voice, and even in my youth, I had a lot of vibrato with that quivering of the voice, more classically trained. And so I had to fight that until I felt comfortable getting on stage without feeling that intimidation and that doubt and insecurities. And even yet, as an adult, I still go through that from time to time. And so when I can perform without having that, I feel as if I'm crushing my mountain, and I'm climbing and I'm overcoming that obstacle that makes me doubt myself. And one of the things that helps me come to grips with that is understanding, as I said initially, it comes from lack of knowledge, not being educated or exposed, less exposure from people. They don't understand what they don't know. And a lot of times when people don't know something, they're afraid of it, or they make fun of it or laugh at it. So that helps me know that that person is laughing because they just don't understand what I do or don't have an appreciation for it. So that helps me to crush my mountain and to be able to accelerate and go forth in spite of someone else's viewpoint or opinion of my skill and talent and abilities.
Well, we always say that it's an amazing thing to have you with us and to be able to share that bit of knowledge. Friends, fight your fears. Be determined to use your voice as a modality for healing yourself, healing others. Find the ways of bringing that love and peace, because that's part of health as well. It's not just about taking a medicine, it's about being the medicine. So we wanted to invite you to, once again, as I always say at this time, before we close out, I say, don't just climb your mountain, crush through it. And we'll see you next time. Roz, thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate being asked.